Hey everybody, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics. In this video, we're going to talk about close quarter shooting or close compression shooting in less than ideal conditions. Get back! Get... Now this is a topic that I guess you could say is very near and dear to my heart because I want to be as realistic as possible in the way I practice and the way I train people. If you think about the situation, I know I've talked about this before, profit crime, personal crime, it's more likely that someone's going to get closer to you than they are going to be further away when they start their attack or demand your wallet or your car keys or whatever the situation is. Distance equals time. I know I've talked about that before. I don't want to beat that horse too much, but the closer my threat is to me, the less time I have available to deal with that threat, and quite possibly the less options I have. You think about this, your standard 1 arm's distance or 2 arms distance or potentially an elbow's distance or less. I have to be able to get the gun in the fight when I need the gun to get the threat off me. If I'm dealing with a knife or something like that, I'll probably highly recommend controlling that blade first, or at least deflecting it to a degree to where you can get your gun out. Control is going to be better than deflection because if you knock someone's knife away, it's coming right back. There's no way that you're going to be able to prevent that unless you knock it from their hand, which is also very unlikely. So in a close quarter shooting situation, I have to be able to fire from a compressed position. The compressed position is kind of irrelevant as far as technique goes, as long as it's something that's going to work and it's something that makes sense. Your classic technique is come in, index from the side, off the rib cage, maybe off the hip. I prefer to roll the gun out a little bit to definitely clear that slide, and then you see a high pectoral index being something that some people teach. Most of the techniques you see being taught and practiced exist because ranges have training limitations. The majority of ranges you find in the US do not allow high angle shooting. So if I'm shooting from the hip, where am I shooting my bad guy at? In his hips. Is that a good place to shoot someone with a handgun? Not really. It's not a bad place, but it's not the best place. Obviously there's some things in here critical for mobility and a few arteries critical for life function. The arteries are obviously going to be a lot harder to hit than the bones. Handgun rounds are unlikely to shatter that pelvic girdle, as it's called, the ilium. So we've got an aorta, which become the iliac arteries, which become the femoral arteries in the leg. They're very hard to point target, even for medical professionals who know exactly where they are. It's a super small target, not very realistic. So if we have to shoot someone in the pelvis, we will. The reason we constantly shoot people in the pelvis when we practice these close retention drills is because the way ranges are. They don't allow rounds to go up at a high angle from close quarters. I prefer to use ranges like the range I'm on today that do allow me to shoot high angle. So if I come out from the hip, I can shoot him in the chest, or if my kinesthetic shooting is on point, I can shoot him in the face. Shooting from the hip, no matter which angle you angle the gun at, is all about eye-hand coordination. Our natural innate ability to roughly align our hand placement with where we're looking. It's how people catch baseballs, footballs, soccer balls, whatever's thrown at them. It's how we do that, and we usually do it pretty intuitively. When it comes to firearms, we tend to get wrapped around the axle thinking about the situation and overthinking the situation. The gun has sights on it. We want to use those. But there are certain situations where we do not have the luxury of being able to use sights. Can I shoot accurately without the aid of my sights? And this is something I've demoed before, but for the sake of this video, I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate it again. If I'm coming out from the hip, I may not have two hands, the luxury of a two-handed draw from concealment, whether it's from the hip or from appendix or wherever you carry. I may not have two hands. This hand may be pinning the knife against him, I may have a thumb in his eye, I may be doing any number of things, to include this arm's already been injured by knife stabs or hits with a bat or maybe a gunshot wound, who knows. So I want to train it both ways, but I want to prepare for the possibility that I only have one hand available to me to perform the draw stroke. I can come out, index, that's a pretty good hip shot, but it's a little high. How about the chest? How about the face? As you can see, it's not pinpoint, aimed, accurate fire, but it does display the ability to shoot accurately without the aid of sights, just using eye-hand coordination. Now obviously one of the real-world concerns are, if I'm going to index from the hip and I'm going to do a high-angle shooting, what if those rounds miss him? Well, what if they miss his pelvis? What if they miss anything? What if, what if, what if, what if? My immediate concern is my personal safety, my personal survival. My secondary concern is if I do throw a round, I am responsible for that round. So it's up to me before this situation ever takes place that I train to a level of proficiency where I'm comfortable using a more effective technique than shooting strictly to the pelvic girdle. If I train to shoot the high thoracic or train to get him in the face, then I will be comfortable with the idea that if I do get in a situation like this, I can index from the hip and deliver accurate fire to that thoracic cavity or that cranial vault. Now, if the round goes over him, that's unfortunate. That's a situation that we would have to deal with. So if you're worried about that, you may limit your target zone to the thoracic and the pelvic. But I strongly suggest that no one limit their targeting zone from a compressed shooting position to the pelvic girdle in this situation. Now, some other techniques I'm about to go over, the pelvic girdle would not be a very good choice at all. Now, in a situation where I'm confronting multiple threats, are multiple threats likely? Yeah, they are likely. They may not be as likely as a single threat, depending on the situation, profit or personal crime, or just random act of violence. But it's something that we need to be prepared for. We should obviously build our proficiency on confronting the single threat, and then work on our proficiency of confronting multiple threats, because the more proficient we are at one, the better we are going to be when it comes time to transition from threat to threat to threat to threat. Now, my two bad guys here both have knives. That can simulate an actual knife, or a bat, or a club, or a stick, or even empty fists. You think about a disparity of force. If I'm being attacked by a crowd of people, I might have to use force against one or more of those people in order to save my life. Especially if I find myself in a situation where I've ever been struck in the face multiple times, I feel like I might lose consciousness, they may gain control of my firearm, maybe they know I have a firearm, they're trying to take the firearm from me. There are hundreds of thousands of possible variables that can go into the situation that you find yourself in, and I can't help you predict that. I can just help you with the tools to prepare yourself for it. So I've got two threats. Now, we're simulating melee weapons, handheld weapons, weapons that you have to physically reach out and touch someone with to hurt them. Obviously, the larger the weapon, the greater the range of motion. They got a bat, they don't have to get as close as they do with a knife. But that's my situation. Now, from here, if I was to say I was blocking, or maybe I had the aid of both my hands and I could do a two-handed draw, maybe my initial concern isn't so much getting the gun in the fight immediately, but using the gun as a deterrent. So, if I've got more distance in this, I may already have the gun out. I may have started with aimed in. Maybe I let them get too close, or maybe they rushed me in a situation where they're literally running at me. Maybe by the time I'm ready to fire, I'm able to fire or perceive the ability to fire. Maybe I hesitated a little bit. They're so close that I don't want to shoot at full extension, so I would be back here. How do we shoot accurately without the gun even in our peripheral vision? Because obviously from here, I don't want to look down at the gun. I want to be able to shoot from right here. Can I still shoot accurately from a compressed position if I have to confront multiple threats? Now, I'm on a range, so I'm outdoors. I got a lot of room to move around in, so it wouldn't make sense for me to engage these guys and not move back as I was doing it. But do gunfights happen on ranges? Not very often. In fact, not often at all. So what kind of environment might you find yourself in where moving back at a high rate of speed with a lot of room to work with might not be possible? Think about a parking lot. An L-shaped hallway, a small room, the inside of a diner where you're against a wall. Any number of situations, any number of environments can prevent you from having that range, that luxury we're used to when we're shooting on a square range. So if I'm confronted in a situation like this, maybe I'm able to get the gun out, I can shoot from here, and I can shoot very accurately. I'm not having an accuracy problem. This guy already gave up. He dropped his knife and he surrendered. Seriously. So, is it an issue of accuracy being able to get head accurate? Shoot him, and shoot him, shoot him, and shoot him. And I'm doing it from a compressed position. The worst thing that's happening to me right now is I'm getting brass hitting me in the neck. That's unfortunate. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and take that. The slide is kept far enough away from the chest to where it doesn't cause a malfunction on the gun, but I'm able to keep the gun in the fight, and I'm able to keep it out of their reach, because from right here where I'm standing, if I were to go full extension on any of these bad guys, they grab the gun. They may not take the gun from me, but now I'm wrestling over my best means of self-defense. Now, if you've ever taken a self-defense firearms class, this is probably what you're used to. When you shoot from your back here. Target's way down there. You're a bad guy. In a realistic situation, if you find yourself shooting from your back, how did you get there? That's something we have to think about. How did I end up on my back? most likely that guy knocked me on my back, or maybe somebody else did. Whatever the situation is it very realistic for him to knock me down and then run back there? No. The reason we shoot the targets when they're that far away is because of training range artificialities. Again, it comes back to high angle fire. I have to move far enough away from my threat so that my rounds that I shoot in training do not go over a berm and create a real world safety issue. That's range issue. Range design is usually 20 years behind firearms training. The range I'm on right now allows me to shoot realistically. I can shoot high angle shooting on this range, but the number of ranges in the US that I personally know of that allow that are very, very, very few. Which means when you practice these techniques with an eye towards realism, you're more than likely gonna have to do it with airsoft, dry fire, a cert pistol with a friend, some situation like that, but it's priceless to practice it. This is pretty unrealistic for our main threat. Now, if I'm training against multiple threats realistically, I may have a bad guy that far away. But it's highly unlikely if you find yourself on your back in a life-threatening situation where a use of force is justified, that your bad guy is gonna give you that kind of breathing room. Now, to me, this is the more likely scenario for shooting from my back. Maybe even your worst case scenario. The threat is literally on top of me trying to mount me. Maybe I've got him in my guard, maybe I've got a knee and I'm keeping him off of me. Maybe he's all the way down, both of his hands on top of me, he's crawling up me trying to choke me. Again, worst case scenario. Can you find yourself in this situation? Absolutely. People have died like this for lack of a firearm or lack of a knowledge on how to defend themselves. This is what I have to work with. If I'm able to defend myself to a point to where I can get my firearm out, where is my best place to shoot? Well, it's going to be really hard to miss a headshot from this range. I can come straight out, shoot him right in the face. If I put the gun in his face, what does that tell him? Oh, this guy's got a gun. His immediate concern is going to be control of that firearm. Can I shoot from compression from here? Absolutely. Do I have appendages downrange? Kinda. So when it comes to training this, safe, proficient. If you don't have a range that allows it, obviously you're probably never going to have the opportunity, unless you train with someone who has a range that allows it, to get those high angle shots from this position. But this is your worst case scenario. If I'm going to shoot from compression in this situation, I can basically leverage the gun off of my rib cage with my thumb, and the slide will be able to reciprocate safely and not cause a malfunction on the gun. It allows me to shoot from the closest compression I can, unless I was to bring the gun all the way back here, which brings it into his vision. If a guy's on top of me in this situation, I kind of want to shoot him a few times before he knows I have a gun, because he's so close, he may stop whatever it is he's doing and immediately try to take control of that firearm. I don't want to be wrestling over a gun. Just like this. Good thoracic hits, maybe a headshot, and then I can shrimp out of it, get a shot from here, work my way back to where I can recover to my feet. So obviously compression shooting is more than just being able to shoot from the hip. The hip technique has been ingrained in the self-defense community because of range limitations, not because of real-world situations. Center mass is the high thoracic cavity, if that's what you choose. Center mass is such a colloquial term that it's become the default, I guess, explanation or definition for the thoracic cavity, when in reality center mass is the center of the target offered or selected. If I only have a little bit of my bad guy available to me and I know I can get the shot, I have to choose the center and whatever that is, if it's a good place to shoot. But because we've trained for so long and qualified for so long in shooting this A zone, we want to get that heart, the lungs, pulmonary artery, pulmonary veins, all that good stuff in there. This has become the definition of center mass. So center mass has been selected when we have the whole body available to us because it's the largest target to shoot at. So our margin of error is pretty huge, right? Well, the pelvic margin of error is actually pretty small. Above it is the stomach. There's nothing in there critical for life function. Below it is the legs. Legs hits can be good, but they're probably, best case scenario, only going to be immobilizing hits, not incapacitating hits. If we do happen to shatter the pelvic bone or the hip joint, again, immobilization. It's not incapacitation. So when I think of shooting from the hip, I kind of go back to that, let's go with the largest target we can get available, which is going to be the high thoracic. If your skill level is on point, or if you're comfortable with your headshot distances, you can go for the head from the hip. I don't think the pelvic girdle is really a good place to shoot when you've got other options available to you. Does it take you longer to draw close retention, shoot pelvic? Does it take longer to shoot the high thoracic cavity? I'd say no, because you can have that angle in mind as the gun comes out and basically cock your wrist in that direction, line it up, and get your hits. Now that's something you can check out on your own, either on a SIRT pistol, or if you have a range that allows high angle shooting, or if you have a backdrop high enough that you can get the target really close up close, so you make sure your rounds don't go over. If your range allows high angle shooting, even better, because then you can start working on the face. Most of the ranges you're going to use, especially if you're stuck using an indoor range, are not going to allow this kind of shooting. So it's something that you have to practice in other ways. Just because a range won't allow you to fire live rounds is no excuse for not finding another way to do it. To me, this is really, really critical stuff, because I'm more likely to have to fight at this distance than I am at 100 meters. Now, distance shooting with a handgun, proficiency is key. You got to be able to get those hits. But I have way less time to worry about that this close up. I'm Aaron Cowan with Sage Dynamics. Train accordingly.